This video is going to be split into two parts because if I talked about all of this in one video, it would kind of be incomprehensible. So this video is about the Espada and how each of them signify an aspect of death, and in this first part, we're going to be just going over the base Espada and the former Espada, and something interesting I've been thinking about concerning them. Something that could change the very way that we think of them, and maybe every Aaroniero card. So, subscribe if you haven't already. I have 469 right now, but we can make it to 500 if you just press that button. Or 470. 470 is cool too. And without further ado, let's get into the Espada. So we know that each of them symbolize an aspect of death, and that this is the reason why they act how they do and what abilities they have, implying that the reasons that you could die are all of the above. Some more obvious and less vague than others. Like how Ulquiorra, who's designated with nothingness. This is probably the most vague of the aspects of death. As what exactly is nothingness? Well, seeing how Ulquiorra's personality is, he does not understand human personality or emotions, like, at all. And it also makes sense why Aizen put him in charge of Hueco Mundo when he went to the world of the living. He's not as impulsive as the other Espada. In fact, he might be the only Espada who isn't too impulsive, but taking drastic measures anyways. But nevertheless, he's still a responsible babysitter. Speaking of babysitting, Orihime. She was the catalyst for him to really understand emotion, or at least when he was just beginning to. In his time being alive, in his final moments being alive, Ulquiorra saw a wide range of human emotion. He saw sadness, he saw anger, he saw mourning, he saw revenge, he saw agony, which makes it all the more tragic that all Aizen wanted for him was for him to feel nothing. And if you don't think that was purposeful, then just look at Wonderwise. He was only made to be a weapon. He may be down, but he was up. Anyways, also he had that weird second form. Now, where did that even come from? Maybe his second form was supposed to mean that out of the nothingness, that second form was actually supposed to be something he gained. And he also said that he didn't tell anyone about his second form. Nobody knows about it. Almost like it was some kind of anger that was built up in him. And he only let it out because Ichigo just wouldn't die. The whole death trait thing is really taken to heart, as Nnoitra, whose signifier is despair, it lines up quite well. He felt despair of being weak, so he teamed up with Szayelaporro, who wasn't an Espada at the time, to make him something that would defeat Nell, to assist him in killing Nell. Quotes from Nnoitra say that Nnoitra's idea is that he despises seeing a woman being stronger than a man on the battlefield, and that he also does not need to have a reason for fighting, as Nell tries to tell him that he has no reason for fighting, which they're both true about. I guess it's fitting that he fights against Kenpachi, the literal strongest in the Soul Society, as he makes him feel more despair, as Kenpachi is leagues above him. Let's move on to ecstasy. Zommari he's probably like the most mid Espada ever. I mean, his ability is pretty insane. Anything that he looks upon, he gains control of. That's a pretty good ability, but the way he acts cursed him from the beginning. Also, he went up against Byakuya, the polar opposite of him. He had patience, and he didn't like that. And also, he started arguing over the fact that Hollows are being killed by Soul Reapers, even though Soul Reapers have no right to be doing that. He keeps on blabbering about that Soul Reapers aren't letting him get to the humans. And he's basically like coping, which he so craves. Ecstasy. If it isn't obvious already, he's clearly addicted to humans. There is Aaroniero, who is greed. Sorry, I can't pronounce some of these. Who steals other people's abilities, and that made him the ninth Espada. That's literally all he can do. And they say that Aizen can watch all the skies in Las Noches, I mean. The sky of Las Noches is everything he can see. So Aaroniero brought Rukia into there because he wants her for himself. His greed. He wanted to take her ability, he wanted to take her life. And even worse, there's two of them, so twice the greed. But in the end, their greed was what did them in the first place. And is also why they're the first Espada to go down. Two things I notice about these traits. I mean, just like how Lord Baraggan said, they are at the pit of every character's reason for existing, and abilities as well, And them being aspects of death is even more ironic, as, spoilers, obviously, we're literally talking about death. They all die. In fact, many characters die in the Bleach series. Probably about half or at least 1/3 of them die, and usually multiple times. And you guessed it, they all died for the same reasons, for the same traits that they were designated by. How sad. But this opens up a lot more questions. Like, if they're not the only characters in Bleach who end up dying, then which one of these traits could you organize everyone else's death into? And that's exactly what we're going to be going over today in this video. In the order of the Espada, the closer we get to one, the closer we get to how rare reason of death would be. Or at least something along the lines of that. First, I'd like to talk about destruction, my goat, Grimmjow Jaggerjack. So, what is destruction, or what do they even mean by it? Well, Ichigo came to Wako Mundo to rescue Orihime, but got caught in a scuffle with Grimmjow because they wanted to have a rematch. Grimmjow really wanted to fight Ichigo as he's the I'll fight anyone type of person. Fightaholic, fight sexual, whatever you call this genre of character who seeks out fighting, that appears a lot in shonen. So Ichigo is forced to fight him, as Grimmjow, being the 6th Espada, has more or less an equal strength to Ichigo, or at least he's strong enough at this point where the fight could go either way. Throughout the fight, Grimmjow has made pointless destruction a part of his personality, as seen in this clip.
Am I interrupting? I see you two waltzed right in while Ulquiorra wasn't around. Looks to me like you're having a little fun at someone's expense.
So what of it?
It's our business. And how did you get in here anyway?
What do you mean how? Through the wall, of course.
Why didn't you use the door, smartass?
Grimmjow is prone to destructive habits as these, as well as his regular destructive habits. Makes much more sense now. When Grimmjow was evolving, he had somewhat friends and was still a lower hollow. He ended up eating his friends as they let him eat him, as their skulls were broken. And Grimmjow is almost trying to ensnare Ichigo. He almost led him to dying to destruction, because if he ended up being the one who died instead of him, then he very well could have been a symbol of destruction. Out of every one of the Espada thematically, I think the one I was able to get the least from was Szayelaporro. He was just crazy, and I guess it makes sense that madness is his trait. He's almost exactly like Mayuri. The only difference is that he's an Arrancar and Mayuri's a captain. After he won, he just wanted to experiment on everyone, and I think torture them or make them slaves, or actually all of the above. That shot of him sticking his Zanpakuto down his throat is burned into my head. That really tells you all you need to really know about him. Yeah, I think I'll end this segment here. It's not really that much. Of course, we have Solitude with Stark, the strongest Espada, the first Espada. Espada number 1. He was so strong that his spiritual pressure couldn't let anyone get close to him, and it was lonely at the top. So he split himself in half, and that's probably the only reason how he's able to sit with the other Espada at the table, because they would all be dead if he was in his complete form. But they all are Vaso Lords, so maybe that's not completely right. And he has the most tragic death out of any Espada, as he simply ran out of Reishi. He simply used up too much Reishi in a fight, and lost the only one to keep him company. It also makes sense why his ability is a wolf, because loneliness, solitude, lone wolf, yeah. But the only debatably more tragic has to be Halibel, who represents sacrifice, who fights for her fracciones, and they fight for her. They're like a team. And also, she didn't want to gain strength from eating other Espadas, which it's even more surprising how strong she actually is from not eating anyone. It's even more surprising because she's Espada number 3, and she has an even more tragic ending, being slain by the one who recruited her, Aizen himself. In fact, she was the reason he began to stop sacrificing everything and take things into his own hands. And of course, there is my least favorite Espada, and probably a lot of people's least favorite Espada, Yami, who is number 0 and number 10 at the same time. He's just mad, he's rage. I think it's pretty obvious, like, how this can get you killed. I don't really like him. I almost forgot Lord Baraggan, obviously. Senescence, basically aging. Yeah, how could you forget about dying from old age? And it only correlates that he died, him being the king of Wako Mundo, then being dethroned, being reduced to an Espada, and then being reduced to a crown. Only for people to basically forget about him as a new ruler takes the hand, as it is no longer his time. He wanted to usurp Aizen in the end, but it came out as a faint cry instead, and I think that's it for all the Espada. But I'm really here to talk about, since there were former Espada, like Neliel and Lupi, and maybe even Wonderwise if you can include him, what were they supposed to represent? Well, for starters, the most obvious one, and the one that is most likely to actually have been in the Espada, because we know she was in the Espada, Nell. She has this weird super speed headbutt thing that she does, and that's like one of her only abilities that we know about, other than turning into a centaur for her resurrection. I suspect she was something along the lines of attachment, responsibility, maybe even duty. If you looked at her centaur form and I told you that she represented duty, then I would believe you. It just seems like she holds people accountable for a lot of things, and maybe I guess I should just say accountants. Which is only more reinforced when Nnoitra literally says, "The number on your back is meaningless now," and she says to Ichigo that he protected her once, and now she will protect him. Both of these lines of dialogue representing despair and accountability, respectively. She also says words like, "You are a beast. I do not acknowledge you as a warrior. I have no obligation to kill you." Maybe she's judgment. Maybe she's respect. Out of all of these, I think it makes the most sense that she represents accountability. And there's also Loopy. This guy got one shot by Grimmjow. I think it's pretty obvious. I think the only thing that lines up is that he has ego, and he always snaps whenever someone insults him. I also recall him flexing it on Grimmjow when he got replaced, when he took his number as an Espada. He just catches his enemies and just nags them. He's just the fruity insulter. I feel like his real ability is just to tick people off.
I've heard enough of your crap. I think you've got a big mouth.
And what would your point be?
There's nothing more disgusting than a man who won't shut up. Do you ever even listen to yourself?
Look, lady, have you forgotten that I have captured you?
Like he's playing some kind of psychological game, and he lost it when he ticked the wrong person off, that being Grimmjow.
Goodbye, Mr. X number 6.
Also, look at him being beat by Toshiro. Like, nobody else screams like this in the series. He barks like 4 times more than he bites, and he barely even bites. Even when he's dying, he can't keep his mouth shut. But actually, wonder why this is not an Espada, so yeah. But maybe with everyone dead, he could have gotten a spot. This video is probably a bit long now, but they're releasing the 1000-Year Blood War arc, like, weekly, and they're adding new parts that weren't in the manga, so it's like it's not completely different, but there's little new details, like, so I'm gonna wait for that before I make the second video, because, it would just make sense to. But yeah. The second part of this video will be all about character deaths, so that's why I'm waiting, to see everybody who dies. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe. I actually have 270 now, like, after recording this, so if you subscribe, you can make it 271, and, yeah. Also, join the Discord, it's like it's in the description, like in every video. I just forget to promote it. I talk about everything I talk about on the channel on there, plus I do polls asking what people want my next video to be about. And, yeah. Also, if you guys join, I could probably get to, like, we probably get, like, 100 members in there before the end of the year, and, I'll probably give you, like, an OG rank or something like that. That's it. Subscribe. And who is your favorite Espada? And who's your least favorite? And one last question, whose death can you link to one of these traits as well? In Bleach, of course. Not in real life.